Hello, bonjour, namaste, ni hao, and ohio everybody. What is going on? It is Galeriot here. Welcome back to the YouTube channel once again for another Danmachi video. And today we are going to be tackling the Bell and Ryu what if once again, because this time round we have the complete Chinese translation, and as a result we have been able to machine translate everything from Chinese to English. So we actually have a lot more details and a lot more information to go over to analyze for this Bell and Ryu what if. Now, of course, if you guys go on to enjoy this video, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel for more Danmachi content, and let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think about all the new pieces of information that we have gotten? Has it changed your mind in regards to this what if? Do you guys feel the same way? Do you guys feel any different? Let me know in the comment section down below. Now, before we get in, of course, if you want to access this Chinese translation or the machine translated English version, I will be leaving links to them down below in the description. One of them is going to be machine translated, of course, like I said, from Chinese to English. So some of the names and stuff will be very weird to get over, some of the skills and stuff like that. So of course, keep that in mind. It'll be a little bit tricky to understand what is what and who is who more so than anything else, but for the most part it's very much straightforward and you can get a grip of what is exactly going on in the story, of course. Now, before we get in, I want to do a little bit of a TLDR of what happened last time round when we did get the Bell and Ryu what if spoilers, of course, right? So back in June, I think it was, yeah, early June, I think it was, we got a couple of Reddit posts going over certain bits of information from the Ryu and Bell what if that we had gotten from Momori Sensei for the release of the Blu-ray for season 4 part 2, right? And it caused a lot of chaos in the community. It caused a lot of chaos because effectively a lot of things that happened in that what if where people just didn't like it. Stuff like, for example, Bell being called a simp for eyes because LIARIS Freeze was super dependent on eyes, and along with it people were also saying that his soul color shouldn't be changing, which was something that was mentioned in the what if, and we'll talk about that in a moment as well, because we do get a little bit more clarity on what exactly went down in the story, of course, and a couple of other things as well, that in the for example, oh, without Bell being in love with eyes, the world is doomed, basically, and a lot more stuff like that, basically. So today we're gonna clear up as much as possible exactly what's gone down in the what if, because I feel like we did get a lot more information that we desperately needed, and I even said it in that video that, you know what, let's wait until we get the full translation, because a lot of people are gonna be just pickpocketing certain things out of context, and since we don't have the context, we're gonna get everything wrong realistically, right? So I said let's wait until we get the full translation, and now that we have the full translation, we're making this video, basically. So let's get right into it. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be pulling up this, and I'm going to be keeping it on this screen, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some key points that I have written down on the side that I want to talk about. So the first key point is, of course, the start of the what if, basically, and how it began. Basically, during the events of volume 14 and when they were in the lower depths of the dungeon, Bell chose Ryu. It's as simple as that. Bell chose Ryu. Now remember that this is actually part 2 of a 2-part story. So part 1 was released, I think, alongside the Blu-ray of season 4 part 1, if I'm not mistaken, or sometime before then. But basically it was supposed to be the start of like Bell and Ryu, you know, starting to be a little bit fond of each other. Bell and Ryu trained a lot more together than they actually did in the main timeline and stuff like that, right? So basically in part 1 it was sort of like developing Bell and Ryu's relationship even further, right? And then of course in part 2, now Bell has chosen Ryu. While in the dungeon, he chose Ryu, basically. And while this inner monologue was going on of, you know, Bell's admitting to himself that he's liking Ryu and everything, something surfaced and then instantly disappeared in his body. He felt that, and effectively what that was that it was the effects of LIARIS Freeze disappearing. It was as simple as that. It instantly disappeared, and we'll talk about that later on again, because Hestia refers to it once more later down in the story. But basically, outside of that, the first half of the story, or the first quarter of the story I should say, is exactly the same as volume 14, except that there is a lot more lovey-dovey and romantic tones to Bell and Ryu's relationship, basically. So outside of that, nothing is any different in terms of volume 14 stuff. But after the events of volume 14, after they come back out of the dungeon and are recovering and everything, and are, you know, accommodating to everything that's happened, and of course Bell and Ryu's relationship taking or going to the next level, I should say. I was gonna say taking to the next level, but it's taking the next step, I should have said. But basically, while they're on the surface level, while they're in Orario, they're taking their relationship to the next level. They're dating one another. Ryu goes up to Seer and apologizes to her, and of course this is where the soul color discussion happens. So Seer goes on a little bit of a monologue saying, you know, that, oh, Belle's colors are still shining as bright and is really beautiful. She even says that it's still beautiful, but the color has changed, but she still likes the color and she looks forward to Belle and Ryu's child. So basically, this is exactly what is being said. So, okay, now let's talk about this, because a lot of people were like, oh, Belle's color changed, that shouldn't be happening or anything of that sort. Well, I mean, people evolve, people change, and we'll come on to change in just a moment, of course, with Belle, because the next section is, I think, the most important section. But I know a lot of people were harping on about the soul part. It's still a beautiful color. It's not like it's completely darkened. It's just slightly changed its color, and Seer still likes it, in fact. So I think, you know, with the whole discussion about the soul color and everything, I think it's not really a big problem, to be quite honest. And I think that, in fact, this is a lot better than what a lot of people were presuming to have happened, where Belle's color just changed for the worse, or it became super, super dark, or whatever it is. It literally just changed slightly, and it's still shining very bright, and it's still very, very beautiful, according to Seer. So that's about it, pretty much. So yeah, I mean, Ryu apologizes to Seer, soul color slightly changes, still beautiful, and she looks forward to Belle and Ryu's child. So that's point number 2, basically, or point number 3, I should say. Point number 4, Belle levels up to level 5, but both him and Hestia immediately notice that his stats aren't going up as much as it should. And in fact, what I'm gonna do is, I'm actually gonna do this, actually. You know what, let me see if I can do this. There you guys go. So I'm gonna pull up my points right here, and I'm going to also pull up Belle's stats sheet, actually, if I can. One second. I managed to translate it, so let me pull up Belle's stats sheet so you guys can see it. But he does level up to level 5, so there's nothing wrong there. It's not like he gained only 2 points and he's still level 4. He did level up to level 5, and he's obviously got effectively taken a step forward, effectively, right? So one second, let me try and find it. There's just so much text. It's 45 pages of text, by the way, hence why I'm getting lost here. One second. But there we go. I got the skills. There we go. So I'm gonna put it right here so you guys can see it, and whoops, there we go. Go over here so you guys can see he's level 5. His strength is 0, endurance is 0, dexterity's only gone up by 1, and agility's only gone up by 2, basically. So they were a little bit like, oh no, what's happened here, kind of thing, right? And they just looked at one another, and they were, and you know, Hestia basically said, or Belle said, growth like that doesn't happen anymore, and Hestia just confirmed, yeah, basically. And effectively what they, you know, refer to it as, and they even talk about it in a monologue, basically, they say that Belle's changes compared to him becoming a mortal now, which I think was it's a little bit harsh to define it like that, but if you think about it, he was the complete odd one out. His level of growth was incomparable. You could argue that a lot of people would have felt that he was a demigod. I wouldn't be surprised that, you know, if Omori Sensei wanted to, maybe that could have been a direction they could have gone, with the potential of, you know, maybe, you know, people referring to him as potentially a demigod, or potentially being considered for something like that. And I know a lot of people initially thought that, you know, maybe, you know, Belle is cheating or something like that, right? But, you know, I can see that being a decent comparison, but it is definitely a harsh comparison, right? Calling him, because basically saying that without LIARIS Freeze, he is now effectively mortal once again, right? It is crazy, basically. It is very crazy to refer to as that, right? Hestia then asks if Belle is scared, but Belle is pretty much like, he had a bit of an inner monologue where he basically had a hunch anyways that because he, you know, turned back on the longing and desire, he lost the right, effectively, to, you know, run like that, basically. And Hestia also adds as well, if he will, you know, she asks him once again that if he will continue dungeoning and will he continue to chase eyes. Belle once again thinks about it a little bit. He thinks deeply and, you know, thinks about how he was running in order to chase the longing, but since that longing is no longer there and it could no longer be followed, he accepted it and said goodbye to his former self. But adds, and this is the critical point, because I feel like a lot of people were like, oh, does that mean he gave up on Wine and the whole thing with the Xenosis and Astreus? No, he adds, in the story itself, he adds that he has a lot to do, including following up on the agreement with Wine and the Xenoses and the inevitable fight with Astraeus. He actually refers to it as that. He says, quote, effectively, and I'll look at this 1 second. There you go. So he says, although I feel like I can no longer catch up with that person, I will continue to explore the dungeon. I'm the head of the Familia, and Wine and the others also have an agreement. Hestia says, is that so? And then he's also adds, yes, I have to fight with that one person once more. And he says, even if I lose my longing, I still want to become strong. Bell changed that longing, no longer a child, but showing a bit of an adult expression. So he basically matured quite a bit in that situation by saying, you know, that he still wants to fight Astraeus down the line. He still wants to uphold that agreement with Wine and the Xenoses. He still has a Familia to lead. He's not just gonna give up and take it lying down. And I think this was a problem because a lot of people felt like he just gave up after that and just had a happy relationship with Ryu, became a house husband, and moved on like that. No. He's still the head of the Familia and he's still excited. And this was where I think I was wrong, and so were a lot of other people. It does seem like LIARIS FREESE is dependent on not only just Eyes, but also Astraeus and the agreement with Wine as well, and all these other factors as well. There's a lot of things happening, but the problem is, right, and this is something that they refer to in the story as well. If he betrays even one of those things, if he says no to one of those things, LIARIS FREESE breaks immediately. It's instantaneously breaks, and it's kind of weird in that regards that LIARIS FREESE is so fragile, but that's just how LIARIS FREESE is, it seems like, right? It is very interesting. It is very, very interesting that, you know, even though he has all these desires and longings, the moment you break one of those longings, it's game over for LIARIS FREESE. It's very interesting in that regards. Let me know what you guys think about that. Do you guys think that makes LIARIS FREESE too weak, or do you guys think it's actually aptly strength and it relies on Bell's motivations and desires extremely well? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. The rest of the Familia also have a discussion about LIARIS FREESE, and Hestia confirms that is no longer active and will no longer function. And because Bell chose Ryu and not Eyes, it's game over for LIARIS FREESE. So yeah, basically this was the discussion that happened, and it is kind of interesting because to me personally, I like it this way. I think honestly, I was also very much on the fence about the idea of it only relying on Eyes, but I was always for it because I felt like, you know what, it was developed because of Eyes. It makes sense. It is only linked to Eyes. However, now it seems like that LIARIS FREESE is linked to a lot of Bell's motivations, but the moment he breaks one of those deep-seated motivations, it can't be just any motivation, by the way. It has to be a very deep-seated motivation, and if it breaks, it breaks, basically. It breaks entirely. So it is very curious to see how that's going to evolve over the main series, the actual main series, and how that's going to adapt. And it does seem like it's not gonna break even if he, you know, connects with Eyes. As long as he doesn't betray Eyes, it's fine. And it doesn't mean that he has to catch up to break it. That doesn't have to happen. If he decides to say that I no longer want to be with Eyes, or I no longer want to, you know, have a relationship with Eyes, or anything of that sort, or be close to Eyes, I'm turning away from that, you know, dream potentially. As long as he's chasing Eyes, as long as he's longing for Eyes, as long as he's longing for that fight for Astraeus, as long as he's longing that desire to make sure that Wine and the Xenoses have their rights on the overworld and are able to come to the overworld safely and securely, that is all that matters. And that's very interesting to me. That is very, very interesting to me. Lily also becomes despondent at this point, and so does Hestia, with Bell choosing Ryu. So this was a little bit of a gag moment effectively in the story, effectively, with you know, the female members of the Hestia Familia crying over the fact that Bell has chosen Ryu and is dating Ryu now. Hestia also decides to contemplate a little bit more about LIARIS FREESE and how she was actually hoping Bell would continue chasing Eyes because of her carving LIARIS FREESE in the first place for Bell. And she adds that it's not an invincible skill because Bell betrayed that longing even once, and the effect would be gone instantly, basically. So effectively, that is the reason why LIARIS FREESE no longer exists. And she kind of compared it to how the elves can't stand some impurities, and as a result, you know, she also said that Bell and Ryu are even similar in that way. So it's kind of interesting in that regards as to how Omori wrote and weaved this story together. Again, I'm liking the way it's handled so far. The way it's handled is exactly what I was hoping for from the story. I know a lot of people were very concerned with the story and everything. I was always like, let's wait and see what the full translation says, because I like what I see, but I think we need a lot more context before we can judge it if it's good or bad. Because if, in all honesty, if it was the other way around, and if it was like, you know, very much the opposite of what this is, and is like, you know, his soul has become super dark, or for example, LIARIS FREESE was super linked to eyes and everything, and you know, he's just given up entirely. If Bell had given up, I think more so than anything else, if Bell had given up on everything else and just became a shell of his former self, absolutely. But this shows that Bell was ready to evolve, ready to accept that, you know what, that's my former self, I am now moving towards something else entirely. So I think that's very, very good in my personal opinion. Bell and Ryu also go on dates, and then in one of those dates, Ryu asks if they can go and meet Estrella, and then they go meet Estrella. Estrella gives her blessing, and then asks, you know, Ryu when's the wedding, to which of course Ryu becomes embarrassed. And that was a nice small section. I thought it would have been a lot more in the story, but it was very small and it was very straightforward. Bell and Ryu also thereafter have an extremely close and lovely moment where they admit their fondness for one another, and they say they love each other. In fact, I think Bell says he loves Ryu, and then Ryu says I adore you, basically, instead of I love you, and they basically give a partner's vow, which you can go and read in the machine translated version. And then after that, of course, comes the whole OEBD thing, right? And this is where things get very interesting. It's as follows. I don't think much has been added here, to be quite honest. I had a look through it a couple of times, and I don't think much has changed from the initial version we got. You know, Omori writes that it is certain that the whole world will suffer unavoidably as the OEBD strikes, and familiars and gods will be destroyed. And while the two might be torn apart, they will surely meet again no matter what. While it sets up to be slightly bleak, and I think this is the major point I wanted to make. While it sets up to be bleak, right, it does add the point that it was unavoidable. This is something that's going to happen no matter what. And of course, we know the OEBD is going to happen in the main series. It's not like once Bell gets with eyes, they're just gonna go and kill the OEBD when it's sleeping or something. It's going to be affecting the world. There is going to be death and destruction inevitably. It just sets this up to also have the same situation. But of course, they also say that, you know, there is a good chance that Bell and Ryu may be torn apart, whereas maybe Bell and Eyes won't be torn apart by the fact that the OEBD is striking, because they know that they can try and take it down together, and they want to take it down together, right? Whereas this Bell and Ryu, while they may work towards helping go up against the OEBD, maybe it won't be as much of a driving force as it would have been if Bell got with Eyes, and of course, you know, the whole agenda of revenge against the OEBD and trying to potentially save Arya from the OEBD, right? So that's something that's worth noting in this situation. So for me, now to give you guys my thoughts on this entire situation and this entire effective story, to be quite honest, I like it. I honestly think that this is exactly what I was hoping for from the side story in terms of like the way it was going to be executed and the way it was handled. Remember that this is a story where Eyes has still saved Bell and is intrinsically linked to Bell through LIARIS FREESE. Had it been the situation where Bell got with Ryu and had been intrinsically linked to Ryu with LIARIS FREESE, we wouldn't be here talking about the story, because obviously in that sort of situation we would have still seen Bell grow exponentially and greatly, right? Obviously in this situation we have to take what we have been given to us, and this is a story that takes place during the events of the main series, where Bell has still been connected with Eyes and has now transferred over those feelings for Eyes to Ryu, and of course that's going to negatively affect his LIARIS FREESE skill. Clearly, I think it makes a lot of sense for LIARIS FREESE to be affected by a multitude of things and not just Eyes. I think that's brilliant, and I put my hands up and say I'm standing here corrected. Thank God Omori sensei has finally decided that for once he is being clear about what LIARIS FREESE is. thank the Lord for that. Thank you, Omori Sensei. You finally did something good with this, in all honesty. The problem with LIARIS Freeze is that because nobody knew how it worked, everybody was just coming up with ideas on how it worked and were pretty much wrong in every shape or form, right? I think a lot of people were feeling that way, like, oh, you know, if one thing breaks, it shouldn't break at all, right? He's still got that longing and desire for other things. And on the other side, a lot of us, including myself, thought it was okay, it's intrinsically linked to ice. If it is ice, it is going to break. You know, if it isn't ice, it's going to break. If it is ice, it's going to stick around. And I thought that nothing else would be affecting LIARIS Freeze. Turns out everything affects LIARIS Freeze, but LIARIS Freeze is also very fragile, and one thing will break it, basically. So that is something to note with LIARIS Freeze. And I'm very curious to see, you know, exactly how it'll develop in the main series as well, you know, especially if any other further events happen, because I feel like we're approaching the end game now of Danmachi, right? I think we are approaching the end game of Danmachi right now, and I feel like there's only a little bit more of development to go for Bell, I feel like, when it comes to his character and personality and his motivations, right? I think we're getting closer and closer to the Eyes arc for sure, right, as well. So we'll have to wait and see on that front as well. In terms of the soul and coloring, I think it made so much sense for sure. I don't think I have any issues with that. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section below. I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update now that we have the translation and everything. I want you guys to have a look at it yourselves as well in the comments of this video. In the description of this video, there is a link to this machine translated version. And of course, if you have any thoughts yourselves, let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please be sure to leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.